Welcome back to the RP Forbidden Romances channel. For those of you who followed my stormy night and the breaking of all my barriers on the leather seat of that luxury car, you know that the old, sad Rachel died right there, under the cold Seattle rain. But daylight always brings reality back, doesn't it? Waking up next to the man who betrayed me now had a completely different taste. Prepare your heart and stay with me until the end, because the surprise waiting for me in the middle of my shift at the beauty salon was just the spark of a fire that was about to consume my entire life. Let's continue this story. I woke up that morning with a strange feeling in my chest, a weight oscillating between sharp guilt and an uncontrollable euphoria. The moldy ceiling of my bedroom looked the same as always, but I felt like I had woken up on another planet. The sound of the fine rain hitting the window sounded today like a secret song only I could hear. I looked to the side and saw Roger sleeping heavily. The man I had shared the last 10 years with now looked like a stranger. Just background noise in a movie I was no longer watching. Before I tell you what I found inside my purse that made my heart almost leap out of my throat, make sure to click the button to follow the Forbidden Romances channel. Your help is vital, so we can keep bringing you thrilling stories like this one. If you have ever experienced a love that turned you inside out, or if you are rooting for Rachel's happiness, leave your like and subscribe right now. Let's go on this journey of discovery and courage together to see where this revenge leads. I got out of bed with my usual care, walking on eggshells so as not to wake him. The routine of brewing the coffee and ironing his uniform seemed absurdly mechanical on that gray morning. I went through the motions my body had memorized, but my mind was trapped in the day before. It was as if I had swallowed a star that was shining from the inside out, burning my insides with a heat that hot coffee could never equal. Roger woke up grumbling, complaining about the damp weather and the life he himself had chosen not to improve. I poured his mug in silence, observing this man who cheated on me, and I felt a terrifying calm. The calm of someone who knows the tables have turned. He didn't even notice that my gaze was not lowered and submissive like usual. I felt shielded, protected by a recent memory of soft hands and words of validation. I went to the bathroom and locked the door, needing a moment alone to face the new woman who was emerging. Looking in the spotted mirror, I saw the dark circles of exhaustion on my face. But to my surprise, there was a vibrant sparkle in my eyes that not even sadness could extinguish. It was the secret of knowing that for the first time in years, someone had truly seen the Rachel that existed beneath the tired wife. That sparkle was dangerous. It gave away that something had fundamentally shifted in my soul. I splashed water on my face to hide my clandestine happiness. The scent of the plain bar soap could not mask the olfactory memory of her perfume, which seemed to have seeped into my skin. I smiled at the mirror, acknowledging that the woman reflected there was ready to do crazy things. I left the house to catch the crowded bus, feeling the cold wind on my face. For the first time in years, the discomfort of public transit did not bother me. I looked at the tired people around me and felt like part of a universal, delicious secret. The ride downtown was a blur as I mentally replayed the brief touch of her hands on the steering wheel. With every jolt of the bus, I clutched my purse to my chest, feeling a rising anxiety that mixed fear and desire. The city seemed to have gained new colors. The gray of the asphalt and the green of the trees felt more alive, vibrating on the exact same frequency as my racing heart. I was no longer just an invisible passenger commuting to a low-paying job. I was the woman who had awakened the interest of someone powerful. That sense of importance made me keep my spine straight and my chin up. I arrived at the salon, and the harsh smell of acetone filled the air. Susan was already there, organizing her station with that look of someone ready to spew venom. But today, her poison would not affect me. I gave a quick good morning and went to my corner, trying to control the trembling in my hands while lining up my tools. Still organizing my table, I felt an urgent need to check my phone to see if that connection was real. I unzipped my old faux leather purse, digging my hand into the mess of papers. It was at that moment the tips of my fingers brushed against something different. My sense of touch was startled by an extreme softness, and a shiver ran up my arm. My fingers touched cold silk fabric and delicate lace. My heart skipped a beat, and I looked around to make sure no one was watching. I pulled the object out discreetly, shielding it in the cup of my hand. The glimpse of the piece's deep black made my blood run cold and boil at the same time. I knew, before I even fully saw it, that it was a message left by her. I squeezed the fabric against my palm, feeling the heat flush my cheeks. I was holding a forbidden secret in the middle of my workplace. The scent that emanated from that small piece was the final trigger for me to understand there was no turning back. When my eyes focused on the object, I felt the air leave my lungs. It was a piece of black lace lingerie, incredibly fine, with sheer details that screamed sophistication. That designer piece exuded power, clashing completely with my reality. My fingers trembled, holding something so intimate and expensive, feeling the softness of the silk slip over my skin. Victoria must have slipped that into my purse without me noticing during a moment of distraction the night before. It wasn't a careless mistake. It was a calculated move by someone who knows exactly what she wants. She invaded my privacy to leave a piece of herself tangled up with my keys and overdue bills. I discreetly brought the fabric up to my nose. The smell hit me overwhelmingly. That exclusive, woody perfume she wore was embedded in the fibers. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the aroma transport me back to the safety of her embrace. That scent was a signature, an invisible mark that said I belonged to her. I glanced to the side, terrified that Susan had noticed my trance. She was busy gossiping, but I felt as if a spotlight was pointed at my secret. I shoved the lace to the very bottom of my purse, hiding it under my wallet like a stolen treasure. My face burned with a forbidden excitement, and I had to take several deep breaths to normalize my heartbeat. That was a bold and silent declaration of ownership that left my legs feeling weak. Victoria was telling me that she was present in my day-to-day life. I felt marked, and that feeling was terrifying and delicious in equal measure. I started doing the math in my head. That little lace piece probably cost what I made in 2 entire weeks of hard labor. This brutal social contrast gave me a strange vertigo, a mix of indignation and fascination at having access to a world that had always been denied to me. The feeling that my purse was on fire beside me was almost literal. I couldn't stop thinking about her courage to do something so provocative. Victoria had no fear of the consequences, and her boldness was starting to rub off on me. I caught myself smiling, imagining her smile as she slipped the piece into my bag. I tried to get back to work, but my hands refused to obey. I looked at my client's nails, but all I saw was black lace. I heard complaints about the weather, but all I listened to was Victoria's raspy voice in my ear. The salon routine now felt like a cage far too tight for the desire growing inside my chest. Every time I had to open my purse, I caught a glimpse of the black fabric and felt a new rush of adrenaline. It was like carrying an amulet of power. I was no longer poor little Rachel. I was the woman holding a powerful executive's secret in her purse. This gave me a strange strength and a more defiant look. My imagination started running wild, creating scenarios where I returned her boldness in kind. I pictured myself taking off my dull uniform and revealing the black silk, seeing the desire in her eyes. These fantasies left me breathless, struggling to maintain professional composure. The day promised to be torturous, with the hours dragging as if time were being cruel to me. I knew I needed to act naturally, but the fire Victoria lit inside me was hard to put out. I looked at the wall clock every 5 minutes. The discovery in my purse was just the initial spark of a fire that was about to consume all my rationality. The wait for a new message began to eat me up inside. I knew she wouldn't do that without a grander plan. With every phantom vibration of my phone, my heart raced. I hardly knew that the afternoon had an even bigger trial by fire in store for my frayed nerves. The salon wall clock seemed to have gone on a silent strike. The second hand dragged, turning every minute into an eternity of pure anxiety. I filed nails and applied base coat on autopilot, while my mind traveled far away. It was mid-afternoon, and the muted, humid light made everyone sluggish, except for me. I was attending to Mrs. Clusa, feigning interest in her stories while my stomach tied itself in knots. The repetitive motion of my arms contrasted violently with the turbulence of my thoughts. Every time the glass door opened, my neck involuntarily turned, looking for that gaze that saw right through me. The wait was physical agony. Suddenly I felt a strong, long vibration in my pocket. My breath caught in my throat instantly. I knew it was not a message from the phone company. I asked my client for a minute with a trembling voice, fabricating an excuse about needing to check an important medication for my mother. I wiped my sweaty hands and picked up the device like I was holding an unpinned grenade. The screen lit up the dim space under the table, and her name glowed there. Victoria. I unlocked the screen and read the short, direct message. She wrote that she would be passing the corner of the salon at 4 o'clock sharp, and that she wanted to finish what we had started. There were no polite questions about my availability. It was a statement from someone who knows what she wants. She ended the message by stating she demanded I be ready, because she did not like to wait. I read and reread those words. I felt a flutter in my stomach that mixed absolute terror of being caught by my husband with an uncontrollable urge to step into that seductive abyss. Fear screamed in my head to block her number. But the voice of desire spoke much louder, whispering that this was my chance to feel truly alive. I looked at my reflection and saw a scared woman with eyes shining with an intensity I hadn't seen in a decade. I typed just one short word, carrying the weight of a definitive sentence of freedom. Yes. I pressed send before my courage failed me. Seeing the 2 blue check marks confirming she had read my response, I felt a surge of adrenaline so strong I had to grip the edge of the table. There was no turning back. I went back to attending to Mrs. Clusa, making a Herculean effort to paint her toes without ruining the service. Every minute that passed felt like an agonizing countdown. The anxiety was so intense my mouth felt dry as a desert. It was 30 minutes to 4 when I finished the appointment and started packing up with a rush that caught Susan's attention. She gave me that snake-like look, asking if I had an urgent appointment. I forced a smile, said I had a massive headache, and ran to the tiny salon bathroom. I applied a little lipstick, fixed my hair, and tried to convince myself I could do this without fainting from nerves. My phone vibrated again, a mental reminder that my body was already synced to her time zone. I pictured her car approaching, coming to pick me up like an armored carriage. The thought of locking myself in that world of luxury with her gave me an intoxicating vertigo, a sweet anticipation. When the clock hit 3:55, I grabbed my purse. I told the salon owner I was stepping out really quickly and walked out into the damp street air. I walked to the agreed-upon corner, pretending to look at a shop window, but my eyes anxiously scanned the street. When that armored black SUV turned the corner, gliding over the wet asphalt like a silent shadow, my breath caught in my lungs. It stopped smoothly beside me, completely out of place against the backdrop of the worn neighborhood. I froze for a second, feeling that this step would be irreversible. The driver, a discreet man in an impeccable uniform, opened the back door with a reverence I had never received. I dove into the car, enveloped by perfect air conditioning and the smell of new leather. The noise of the street was left behind as the door closed with a hermetic thud. Victoria was there, illuminated only by the soft glow of the dashboard, looking like a queen. She wore a subtle smirk that blended mystery with a restrained satisfaction. We did not exchange many words. The silence filling the cabin was thick with an electric tension that rendered talk unnecessary. The ride was a blur of city lights flashing by the window. As we moved onto a secluded avenue, my heart accelerated. The car slowed down in front of an imposing yet discreet facade with high walls and indirect lighting that screamed exclusivity. Driving into that private garage made me feel completely detached from my reality. When the driver exited, leaving us alone in that cube of silence, The anticipation reached its boiling point. Victoria turned to me, and the gleam in her clear eyes said the game of seduction had reached its climax. We entered the suite through a private door, and what I saw left me breathless. The room was larger than my entire house, with a sophisticated decor that blended shades of gray, black, and gold. There was a heated pool with a gentle waterfall, competing with the low, enveloping ambient music. I felt like a fraud, a simple manicurist invading a palace reserved for the elite. I looked down at my worn-out sneakers, feeling a sharp shame. The critical voice in my head screamed that this was not my place. But then, I felt Victoria's warm, firm hand wrap around mine, gently pulling me into that dreamscape and closing the door. Her touch acted as a heavy anchor, silencing my fears. She didn't look at me as if she were doing me a favor. She looked at me with admiration. We walked hand in hand to the center of the room, where a gigantic bed covered in white sheets waited for us. Victoria dropped her purse and turned to face me, reducing the distance between our bodies to almost nothing. The heat radiating from her mixed with that intoxicating perfume. She raised her hand and caressed my cheek, a gesture of tenderness that instantly warmed my soul. I closed my eyes, trying to memorize the sound of her breathing, which was starting to grow heavier. Right there, the intimidating luxury of the room vanished, and all that remained was the raw truth of the desire we shared. My insecurity was drowned out by the absolute certainty that, to her, I was wanted. But I knew the next step would be the hardest, stripping down the body I had learned to hide and criticize for so many years. When I opened my eyes and was met with my own reflection in the side mirrors, shame hit me. I saw my simple clothes clashing violently with her effortless elegance. I thought of my plain undergarments beneath that cheap fabric, and I felt mortified. I carried luxury in my bag, but wore simplicity on my body. The fear that she would see my real body, stripped of the clothes that hid my imperfections, choked my throat. I thought of the stretch marks that time had etched into my skin. I had the cowardly urge to ask her to turn off the lights so she wouldn't see the raw reality of my flesh. Victoria noticed my instinctive retreat. She didn't try to convince me with empty speeches. She took action. She took a step forward, invading my personal space with a sweet authority. She placed both hands on my waist, and the heat of her palms pierced through my blouse, burning my skin and silencing my fears. Her gaze swept over my body with a restrained hunger that made my legs feel weak. She whispered right next to my ear that I had nothing to be afraid of. She wanted to know every detail I tried to hide from the world, and my shame was the only thing not welcome in that room. Her hands moved slowly up my waist, tracing an exciting path until they reached the first buttons of my blouse. I stopped breathing, watching the scene unfold in the mirror. She undid every button with an almost religious reverence, savoring the moment of revealing the skin underneath. I stood perfectly still, surrendered to that ritual. I felt every inch of exposed skin burn under her gaze. There was no vulgar lust in Victoria's eyes, only an adoration that made me want to cry out of gratitude. She was peeling back the thick shell I had built to protect myself, when the blouse finally fell open, revealing the vulnerable skin of my chest. I had the automatic instinct to cross my arms. But Victoria gently grasped my wrists, keeping them at my sides. She leaned in and planted a soft, lingering kiss on my bare shoulder, sending electric shocks straight to my lower abdomen. She whispered that she saw no flaws there, only art. Hearing that from a woman so perfect felt like receiving a pardon for not being a magazine cover model. When she pulled back slightly to unbutton my jeans, the air grew thicker. The garment fell to the floor, and I stood there, stripped of my outer layers, exposed before the most powerful woman I had ever met. The white marks on my hips were visible under the golden light, shouting out my history as a real woman. I expected her to look away, but the spark of desire only grew brighter in her eyes. She knelt in front of me, ignoring the cold floor, and kissed those very marks, turning my scars into points of worship. That gesture was so unexpected I had to hold on to her shoulders to keep from falling. She was rewriting my relationship with my own body. I understood that to her, I was a temple to be revered. The final barriers I was so ashamed of were gently cast aside with a delicacy I had never experienced. I stood completely bare, without anything to hide behind, feeling strangely powerful. Instead of feeling cold, I felt an overwhelming heat when she stood up and pulled me against her body. The contact of her skin against mine was absolute confirmation that I was desired exactly as I was. The touch of her hands trailing down my bare back was the prelude to a symphony I never imagined hearing. The world outside ceased to exist entirely within those four walls. Now it was just the two of us, and the promise of a profound abyss where I was about to throw myself head first. I surrendered to her scent, allowing Victoria to guide me into the pleasure I so rightfully deserved. The world stopped at that exact instant. When her warm, soft hands caressed my skin, I closed my eyes tightly, gripping the Egyptian cotton sheets as she gently kissed my neck. Every touch was a silent promise of devotion, erasing years of neglect. The intensity of our connection grew until the boundaries between us completely dissolved in a wave of pure emotion. As the room faded into a beautiful, hazy darkness, I surrendered completely to the profound intimacy we shared. Putting my old clothes back on felt like a cruel physical punishment, as if I were covering a newly restored masterpiece with a worn rag. The smell of the room, that intoxicating mix of expensive perfume and freshly made love, was still caught in my hair. Victoria was already dressed, flawless once again in her tailored armor, but her gaze upon me carried a silent, firm promise that this had not been a final goodbye. We walked to the car in silence, taking with us the complicity that now bound us like an invisible steel wire. Victoria's armored car glided across the wet asphalt, hermetically sealing us off from the harsh reality outside. With every corner we turned, getting closer to my neighborhood, I felt the air grow heavier in my lungs. The bubble of protection was about to burst. I looked at Victoria's firm hands on the steering wheel and felt a sharp ache in my chest, the paralyzing fear that the magic would dissipate the moment I set foot on my potholed sidewalk. She noticed my growing tension immediately and placed one hand on my thigh in a gesture of comfort. The heat of her palm pierced the rough denim, trying to transmit a sense of calm. Victoria drove with impressive patience, as if she wanted to postpone my surrender as much as I did, but the destination was relentless. I felt like a prisoner being marched back to a cold cell after catching some sun, with my soul cleansed, but my body condemned. When the car turned onto my street, the social contrast was violent. The shiny luxury vehicle clashed aggressively with the unplastered houses and the garbage piled on the sidewalks. I wanted to shrink into the leather seat until I disappeared. The shame of my poverty mixed with the secret pride of being with her. I saw curious neighbors peering through windows, and I felt exposed and judged. But the worst was yet to come. My heart skipped a painful beat when I recognized the stocky silhouette under the weak light of the street lamp. He was there, arms crossed over his puffed-out chest, with the rigid posture of someone guarding stolen property. It was Roger, and seeing him there brought rushing back all the toxicity and fear I had managed to forget in Victoria's arms. He shouldn't have been there at that hour. He should have been at the factory. He wore that dark scowl that preceded the yelling and humiliations. Panic hit me with the force of a physical punch, drying my mouth and making my hands shake uncontrollably. I murmured a breathless no, but Victoria heard it, and I saw her posture shift immediately from serenity to combat mode. Victoria's eyes narrowed, focusing on the man standing on the sidewalk like a lioness spotting a threat. She slowed the car to almost a halt, assessing the situation with calculating coldness. While I trembled with childish terror, she seemed to be drawing up a mental war strategy in milliseconds. The silence inside the car became tense, charged with dangerous electricity. He saw the car approaching, and his expression shifted from pure rage to an aggressive confusion, searching the tinted glass. I knew exactly what he was thinking, fueled by his sick jealousy. He must have been imagining I was with some rich lover. The shame of exposing Victoria to that vulgar domestic drama was almost greater than my fear of his violence. I turned to Victoria, my eyes brimming with desperate tears, and begged her to unlock the doors and speed away the moment I stepped out. I wanted to protect her from my dirty reality and stop his ignorance from ruining the beautiful memory we had just built. But I should have known that Victoria was not a woman who ran from anything. Seeing my desperation, her jaw clenched in a gesture of determination, and her fingers gripped the steering wheel tightly. The car stopped smoothly a few feet from where he stood. He uncrossed his arms and took a threatening step toward the vehicle, trying to intimidate whoever was inside. I felt tiny, curled up in the seat, wishing for invisibility. Victoria turned off the engine, but kept the electrical power on. She turned to me with an intense look that mixed fury against him with a fierce protectiveness for me. The message in her eyes was crystal clear. She was going to step into the arena with me and fight. The sound of his heavy hand slamming against the car's bodywork made Victoria grit her teeth in anger. Victoria sighed with supreme irritation and reached decisively for the power window button. I tried to grab her arm, whispering a desperate, "No," afraid he might physically hurt her. But she ignored my plea with a sovereign confidence, and the window began to roll down. The damp street air rushed into the car, carrying my husband's fury with it. My husband puffed up his chest, preparing the scream that would humiliate me for the rest of the year. His index finger was raised, ready to call me those horrible names. But the only sound I heard was the final hum of the electric window rolling down. The silence that settled over the street was heavier than any scream. The car window revealed Victoria's imposing figure sitting at the wheel with terrifying calm. Roger's eyes met hers, and time seemed to freeze. I saw the transformation happen in real time. The red flush of anger drained instantly from his cheeks, replaced by a sickly pallor of someone who has just looked death in the face. His mouth, which had been opened to shout insults, froze mid-motion. The accusing finger slowly dropped, losing all its strength. He stumbled a step backward, as if he had seen a ghost. Victoria didn't need to say a single word to disarm the man who had terrorized me for years. Her mere presence was enough to castrate him right then and there. Victoria opened the car door with a fluid, decisive motion. She stepped out, and her leather boot touched the dirty asphalt with an authority that made the ground shake. She looked like a giant, a tower of power that did not belong in that suburban setting. She adjusted her flawless blazer, ran a hand through her hair, and locked her eyes onto him. It was a look that reduced him to dust in a matter of seconds. I looked back and forth between them, confused by his abrupt, cowardly change. I was expecting an explosion, but what I got was terrified silence. His posture hunched over, as if he carried an unbearable weight on his back. "Mr. Roger?" Victoria's voice cut through the damp air, loaded with an icy, professional chill. My husband swallowed hard and bowed his head in an automatic reflex of submission I had never seen before. His hands, which minutes ago wanted to break the glass, now clasped together nervously in front of his body. Miss Victoria?" he stammered, his voice thin and devoid of any macho bravado. It was at that exact moment the realization hit me. Victoria was not just some random wealthy woman. She was the famous executive director, the ice witch he complained about every day, the supreme boss of his company. The irony hit me like a punch that carried a hysterical laugh trapped in my throat. The man who thought he owned my life was standing there, shaking like a leaf before the woman who had just made love to me. Destiny had placed his tormentor in my bed, and now at my doorstep. Victoria maintained her indecipherable expression. She took a calculated step toward him, making him retreat in terror. The fear in his eyes was genuine, the fear of someone who knows his paycheck is at risk. He knew the power that woman held to destroy his life with a single signature. I did not expect to find an employee from my logistics department acting like a vandal in broad daylight, she said with lethal clarity. Especially attacking my personal car. Do you have any idea how much the armor on this vehicle costs, Roger? No, Miss Victoria. I am sorry. I thought it was... It is just that my wife... He pointed at me with a shaking hand, trying to use me as a shield. But he abandoned the gesture halfway, ashamed of his own cowardice. His authority had evaporated, replaced by the self-preservation instinct of a mediocre employee. The workplace hierarchy had spilled onto our sidewalk. There, before her, he was just a number on her payroll. I stepped out of the car slowly, supported by an intoxicating sense of absolute protection. I stood beside Victoria, and for the first time in years, he did not look at me with anger, but with a profound fear of what I might say. He stood there at the gate, completely disarmed before the flawless executive staring him down with an arched eyebrow. Victoria raised her left arm and pointedly checked her gold wristwatch, a deliberate gesture that made time stop. Roger. Her voice sounded soft, but carried an implicit threat. If my watch is not fast, it is still 4:30 on a business Tuesday, and the logistics supervisor shift does not end until 6 o'clock, she fired off. The sentence hung in the air like a guillotine. The brave husband was caught red-handed abandoning his job. He had left work early to spy on me, and now the owner of the company was witnessing his slacking off. Miss Victoria, I came to fix an urgent problem with the plumbing here at the house, he stammered, inventing a pathetic excuse. Sweat poured down his forehead as he tried to uphold a lie that wouldn't fool a child. Victoria did not even blink. She crossed her arms, assuming a posture of supreme authority. It was then that she unleashed the lie that would save my life and bury his. Curious you would mention domestic emergencies right now, Roger, she said, in a tone of calculated disappointment. Because your wife, Rachel, was at the company a short while ago, desperately looking for you in the lobby. I held my breath, amazed by her audacity. Victoria continued. Security informed me you were not at your workstation. Seeing her nervous state, and not finding the husband who was supposed to be working, I took it upon myself to bring her home to ensure she arrived safely. The blow was devastating. Roger was completely backed into a corner. If he questioned her word, he would be calling the owner of the company a liar to her face. He had no way to justify being home in the middle of his shift, while his wife supposedly needed him at the office. The macho man was now being called out for professional incompetence in front of the entire neighborhood. His aggressive posture melted away into a pitiful submissiveness. The irony was poetic. He left work secretly to catch me in the act, and ended up being caught in the act for leaving work. I felt a lightness in my soul I had never felt before. I am sorry, Miss Victoria. I did not know Rachel had gone there, he began pleading, his voice tearful. I will make up those hours tomorrow. It will not happen again. You can trust me. He stared at the ground, humiliated in front of the wife he used to oppress. Victoria maintained her silence, letting him suffer so he would never forget the lesson. I sincerely hope it does not happen again, Roger, she finally said with the coldness of a judge. Leaving your wife wandering the city alone looking for the husband who is supposed to be working does not align with the values of responsibility I demand from my leadership team. She tethered my well-being to his employment. You got it, ma'am. Rachel is everything to me. I take very good care of her. He lied shamelessly, his cracked voice betraying his absolute terror. Victoria glanced at me, and I saw a gleam of triumph in her eyes, a silent message of mission accomplished. Excellent. Then we understand each other, she said, turning back to the car. Rachel, my dear, get some rest. And Roger, tomorrow in my office, at 8 o'clock sharp, no delays, and with a better explanation than this one. The final threat left him pale on the sidewalk as she drove away like a queen. Victoria's armored car disappeared into the damp fog, leaving behind an invisible protection that hovered over us. I stood on the cracked cement, waiting for the moment when Roger's mask would fall. The silence of the street amplified the sound of his heavy panting. He looked as if he had run a marathon, exhausted by pure panic. I kept my feet firmly planted, braced for the verbal violence that always came. When he finally turned to face me, I instinctively took a step back. However, what I found in his eyes left me paralyzed with surprise. There was no hatred. There was only a liquid, absolute panic. What else did you tell her, Rachel? He asked in a broken whisper, almost begging. His hands visibly shook, and he wiped cold sweat from his forehead. For the first time in 10 years, his priority was not knowing where I was or who I was with. His sick jealousy was instantly swallowed by the financial terror of being fired. I realized then that he no longer saw me as his property. He saw me as a ticking time bomb. I was the person who had the boss's ear. I took a deep breath, feeling a newfound lightness, and decided to play the game Victoria had started. I did not say much, Roger, I replied, maintaining a calm, superior tone. She just saw me crying at the reception desk because you had vanished. She asked if you frequently abandoned your job, and I did not know what to say to defend you. The lie slipped from my lips with the sweet taste of revenge, watching the color drain from his face as he imagined his boss knowing his afternoon flings was a priceless scene. He swallowed hard, muttering curses at his bad luck. He was trapped in his own snare, and there was nothing he could do but humiliate himself before me. He opened the rusted iron gate with a gentleness he had never shown in our entire married life, holding it open for me. I walked into our house, and suddenly the walls seemed less oppressive. He followed close behind, double-locking the door as if trying to lock out the world. "You have to help me, Rachel, for the love of God," he said, following me into the living room like a lost puppy. "Tomorrow you tell her I am a good husband. I cannot lose this job." He paced back and forth, biting his dirty fingernails, sweating through his uniform. It was surreal seeing the man who controlled every penny I spent now begging for my mercy. "She likes me, Roger." I dropped the sentence casually, testing the weight of those words. He stopped pacing and stared at me wide-eyed, absorbing the information like a lifeline. "She said I am an admirable woman and deserve to be treated well," I continued with surgical precision. "I do not think she would harm me, unless she thought you were not taking good care of me." He got the message immediately. His security depended on my happiness. He darted into the kitchen and returned with a glass of cold water, offering it with trembling hands. "Do you want me to order one of those pizzas you like? You don't need to cook today, just rest." I took the glass, almost laughing at the irony. The fear worked instant miracles that love never could. I was ready to enjoy every second of that new dynamic where I finally held all the cards. The next morning broke clearer and brighter. Roger jumped out of bed like he'd been electrocuted, putting on his uniform with manic care, smoothing every crease. I watched the pathetic scene through half-closed eyes, feeling a quiet satisfaction seeing him act like a terrified recruit. He barely had the courage to look me in the eye as he drank his coffee, rehearsing the flimsy excuses he would give Miss Victoria. Before leaving, he stopped at the door and said in a low, respectful tone, "If you need anything, call me. And if she calls you, please, remember what we talked about yesterday." He left in a hurry, terrified of being a minute late. I closed the door and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. That man was no longer my jailer. He was a hostage to the power of the woman who now protected my heart. I headed to my job at the salon with a lightness in my step. The bus ride felt like a peaceful break. I looked out the window and saw Seattle through new eyes, knowing that Victoria was sitting in her penthouse, commanding the corporate world and secretly watching over me. My phone vibrated in my smock pocket in the middle of a dragging afternoon. I ran to the supply closet and answered with trembling hands. "He arrived 30 minutes early today," Her velvety voice sounded on the other end, laced with ironic humor. "He is working harder than I have seen him work in 10 years. I laughed a free, genuine laugh, and whispered how he had turned into a tame lamb. Her tone became sweeter and loaded with promises. "I told him I needed you to come to the company once a week to discuss a new family wellness program," she said. "It is the perfect excuse for us to see each other without raising suspicion." I felt hot tears fill my eyes, moved by her brilliance. Victoria hadn't just solved the immediate problem. She had forged a viable future for us. "You are crazy," I whispered. "Crazy for you, Rachel," she replied, and hearing that was the redemption my soul needed. I walked back into the salon, feeling like the most powerful woman in the world, even while wearing my simple manicurist smock. I knew life would not be a perfect fairy tale. We still lived in different worlds, and we still had a sham marriage to manage. But now, I had an invincible secret weapon. That night, when Roger came home bringing a wilted bouquet of flowers and asking anxiously if I was happy, I accepted the gesture with the dignity of someone who knows she has won the war. He would spend the rest of his life trying to please his wife solely to avoid displeasing his powerful boss. He was trapped in his own web of fear, while I flew free high above him. I would live my truth in her arms, on stolen afternoons, in secret meetings at the company, nourished by a love that saved me from profound loneliness. I lay in bed that night and looked at the full moon through the open window, the same moon illuminating Victoria's downtown penthouse. I knew in that moment that, finally, our souls were free to dance together, high above any wall or prejudice society tried to build between us. But keeping a forbidden romance inside the office of the most powerful woman in the city, right under the nose of my terrified husband, would be a high-stakes game. A single misstep, and our entire secret structure could collapse. If you want a front-row seat to these family wellness meetings in the executive suite, and see how far our thirst for danger will take us, click the subscribe button and leave your like right now. Part 3 is going to turn up the heat in ways you cannot even imagine. See you there.